Picture this. You're scrolling through your phone. You see a headline that makes you blink. Then you rub your eyes. You read it again. Kenyans to process Afrikaner refugees in South Africa. What? It sounds like the setup to a very complicated joke. The kind of joke where the punchline takes 10 minutes to explain. Nobody's really laughing, they're just confused. But this isn't a joke. It's the geopolitical reality of 2025. The United States has cooked up a plan that involves 3 countries, Cape Town, Nairobi, Washington, D.C. It's a global soap opera and we all have front row seats. This story is wild, a tale of strange bedfellows. South Africa, still wrestling with its complicated past. Kenya, a rising East African power in a new role. America, playing global matchmaker with a sledgehammer. First things first, who are we talking about? Who are the Afrikaners? They are not just white people in South Africa. Their story is specific, it's long, and it's complicated. Think of them as the descendants of Dutch, French Huguenot, German settlers who started arriving in South Africa way back in the 1600s. They weren't English, they developed their own language, Afrikaans, which is a daughter language of Dutch but with its own unique flavor, shaped by Africa. For centuries they saw themselves as a distinct tribe, a white tribe of Africa carving out a life on a continent that was not their ancestral home but became the only home they knew. They fought the British in the Boer Wars. This experience of fighting a colonial empire, even as they themselves were colonizers of another kind, forged a powerful sense of identity. It was an identity built on land, language, and a specific brand of Calvinist religion. Then came apartheid. So where does this feeling of being besieged actually lead? It leads to a place called Orania. Orania is not just a town, it's an idea. It's a real place in the middle of the arid Karoo region of South Africa. It was founded in 1991, right as apartheid was crumbling. The whole point of Orania was to be a safe haven for Afrikaner culture. It's a privately owned town where residents are exclusively Afrikaners and the goal is self-sufficiency. They have their own currency, the aura. They have their own flag. They have their own schools where everything is taught in Afrikaans. It is an attempt to build a nation within a nation, a fortress against what they see as a hostile world. For the people who live there, Orania represents survival. It's a place where their children can grow up speaking their mother tongue without pressure. It's a community where they believe their unique cultural traditions can be preserved for future generations. They are not asking for a return to apartheid, they say. They are asking for the right to self-determination, a right recognized by international law for distinct peoples. So why on earth would the United States get involved? America has its own problems. Why would it care about a few thousand Afrikaners in the Karoo Desert? The answer, as always with foreign policy, is complicated. It's a mix of domestic politics, strategic interests, and a dash of good old-fashioned opportunism. On the domestic front, certain influential conservative and evangelical groups in the U.S. have taken up the cause of the Afrikaners. They frame it as a story of a Christian minority being persecuted in Africa. This narrative is powerful, and it puts pressure on politicians to do something to help their supposed brethren. This political pressure created a problem for the U.S. State Department. They couldn't just ignore the issue, but they also couldn't directly intervene in South Africa. So they needed a solution, a clever, indirect solution that would show they were taking action without starting a fight with Pretoria. They needed a middleman, a proxy, a buffer. And so the African Solutions for African Problems funded by America plan was born. The U.S. would provide the funding and the diplomatic cover, but the actual work on the ground, the assessment of the Afrikaners' claims, the interviews, the processing of applications, would be done by another African nation. Narrator Vo. Of all the countries in Africa, why Kenya? Narrator Vo. Why not Nigeria? Narrator Vo. Why not Ghana? Narrator Vo. Why not Ethiopia? Narrator Vo. The choice of Kenya was a calculated and strategic move by the U.S. Narrator Vo. Firstly, Kenya has a reputation for being a relatively neutral and professional player in regional diplomacy. Narrator Vo. They've been involved in peacekeeping in Somalia and in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Narrator Vo. They host one of the world's largest refugee camps, Dadaab. Narrator Vo. That gives them deep experience in humanitarian and refugee issues. Narrator Vo. They have the administrative capacity and the human capital to pull off a complex mission. They are seen as competent. Narrator VO. Secondly, Kenya's relationship with the West, especially the US, is strong. Narrator VO. They're a key partner in the war on terror in East Africa. There is deep military cooperation and significant economic cooperation. Narrator VO. That gave the US leverage, an offer Kenya would find hard to refuse. Narrator VO. For Kenya, it was a chance to elevate its status on the continent. Narrator VO. To be seen as a major diplomatic power and an arbiter handling sensitive issues beyond its borders. The arrival was a sight to behold. A convoy of white SUVs flying the Kenyan flag alongside a small, neutral organizational banner rolled down a dusty road in the northern Cape. Out stepped men in sharp suits, women in sharp suits, blinking in the bright, dry Karoo sun. These were not soldiers or aid workers in khaki vests. They were Kenyan lawyers, academics, civil servants from Nairobi. They were here to open the Special Adjudication Office for cultural claims. The culture clash was immediate and palpable. The crisp, urban professionalism of the Kenyans meeting the rugged agrarian world of the Afrikaners who had come to meet them. It was a scene straight out of a surrealist film. The Kenyans got to work with impressive efficiency. They established a clear, transparent process. Application forms were printed in English and Afrikaans. A schedule for interviews was posted. The lead adjudicator, a respected Kenyan law professor named Dr. Akinyi Otieno, held an opening press conference. Back in the rest of South Africa, the reaction was, to put it lightly, a firestorm. The government in Pretoria was furious. They felt utterly blindsided and humiliated. The official statement was diplomatic but icy. They spoke of unwarranted interference in the domestic affairs of a sovereign nation. The public reaction was even more heated and split right down the middle. Protest in Johannesburg with signs, "One Nation, One Future," and "No to Foreign Interference." For many black South Africans, the idea of Afrikaners claiming refugee status was insulting. It was seen as a slap in the face to the millions who had suffered under apartheid. They were the oppressors, now they claimed to be the victims, was a common sentiment on talk radio and social media. However, not everyone saw it that way. Some South Africans, including some prominent liberal commentators, expressed a more nuanced view. While they didn't necessarily support the Afrikaners' claim, they argued that the government's failure to tackle crime and failure to create an inclusive economy had created a climate of fear for all minorities. This created a rift within the Afrikaner community itself, integrationists and the separatists, making an already complicated society even more fractured. So, what does this all mean for the bigger picture? This bizarre episode involving Kenya, South Africa, and the United States is more than just a strange news story. It could be a sign of things to come. On one hand, it looks like a new, more sophisticated version of the scramble for Africa. Instead of sending armies, global powers might use African intermediaries. They fund and empower certain African nations to act on their behalf. On the other hand, this could be African solutions for African problems. Here, Kenyans are on the ground, making decisions and writing the report. The U.S. might pay the bills, but African experts are in the driver's seat, a pragmatic, project-based model of Pan-Africanism. The impact on the African Union could be profound. This ad hoc arrangement bypassed official AU channels. That risks a fragmented continent of bilateral deals overriding collective goals. Ultimately, a critical question remains. As Africa's global influence grows, what path will it choose? Compete for patronage, a continent of rivals, or work together, leverage collective strength to solve problems on their own terms? The Kenyan mission to Orania is a bizarre test case, uncomfortable test case, fascinating test case. It holds up a mirror to African ambitions and anxieties. The answer won't be decided in Washington or Beijing, but right here in Nairobi, in Pretoria, and in the hearts and minds of Africans themselves.